welcome to the latest episode of the Moviescramble podcast, in which we are continuing our 1995 retrospective. Joining me today is someone who has surely been described as the bad boy of podcasting due to how amazing his hair would look in slow-mo. It's John. John, how are you?
I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting some, he may have looked good 30 years ago kind of idea. But
not at all.
Because you pre-warned me that you'd been working on the intro for the podcast about 3 years. I thought, Mary's come up with something quite digging here. She spent a bit of time on it and she pre-announced it. So yeah, but no, thank you very much. And my hair thanks you as well.
The hair looks amazing this morning. It really does.
Well, I've taken off its stand, so I've given it a bit of an airing. I am good. I am just getting on with it. It's kind of one of these in between sort of months. September, it seems to be a bit of a dip in terms of things going on, but end of the month that starts picking up again. How about yourself? How are you doing?
Yeah, really good. Just about yourself, busy at work, keeping things ticking over, juggling a million different reviews, podcasts and whatever, and just trying to make sure I get enough sleep in between all.
It's the way of it all the time. Sleep's important.
Yeah, it is, but also at night times when I do my best thinking, so it's I struggle to balance I've had this idea and I'm going to write that down, and no, I should probably be resting.
Number of times I've done that just as I've kind of just sitting there and just about to drift off, and then someone pops into my mind about something and I go, oh, I should write that. Fall asleep. I'll still remember it in the morning. No chance.
You never do. It's so annoying. So, but we're not here to put you to sleep, that's for sure, not in this particular episode. Today we are focusing on 2 buddy cop movies, Bad Boys and Die Hard with a Vengeance. So let's start with Bad Boys.
Columbia Pictures presents...
Don't be alarmed, we're Negroes.
Oh man, that's too much bass in your voice. That's scaring white folks.
Martin Lawrence.
We were wondering if we can borrow some brown sugar.
Will Smith.
You see, you something wrong with you. Sir.
The law will be served.
Freeze!
Justice will be done.
You forgot your boarding pass.
Oh, shit. And boys will be boys. Bad boys. What you gonna do?
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
Directed by Michael Bay and written by George Gallo, Michael Barry and Jim Mulholland, the film centres around Detective Sergeant Marcus Miles Burnett, played by Martin Lawrence, and Detective Sergeant Mike Lowry, played by Will Smith, who are best friends and detectives in the narcotics division of the Miami-Dade Police Department. One night, $100 million of seized heroin is stolen from a secure police vault. This is a major blow to Burnett and Lowry because this was the biggest drugs bust of their careers. Internal Affairs suspected it was an inside job and threatens to shut down the entire department unless they recover the drugs within 72 hours. Can the pair track down drug overlord Fushy, played by Checky Cario, his henchmen, and the heroin before their time is up? So, John, before we get into the questions, is this a first time viewing for you? Did you see this at the cinema? Do you have any memories of watching this film at all?
I have never seen this film at all, which really surprised me because I thought I had. I thought I was familiar with the film, but as soon as I started watching, I thought, no, never seen this film in my puff. I was obviously aware of it at the time because Will Smith and Martin Lawrence were a big deal in the early to mid-90s, but no, I did not have a clue about it, so I went in fairly blind. I knew it was a cop film, but apart from that, I didn't really know anything about the plot or anything, so yeah. Good,
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I had obviously heard of it, and I know that it's been sort of much parodied, and sort of there's been sort of loving sort of send-ups of it, but I'd never watched it before. But again, like you, obviously this was sort of Will Smith at the peak of his cinematic power, as it were, hold over the box office. So I obviously knew about it, but hadn't ever seen it. And in terms of obviously Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, how do you think they led the film? Because this is basically, it's all about their personalities. It's all about them getting into trouble. It's all about how they work their way out of trouble. What did you think of them as a leading duo?
They were really good as a leading duo, I thought. They established their rapport right from the very start. The opening scene where they're getting carjacked, it establishes the sort of bickering old married couple nature of them, but obviously in quite a hip and contemporary way, because it is very 90s and everything, and it shows right away the differences between the two characters, the different approaches to life, the different ways that they actually sort of hold themselves, and their what is important to them. And you get that in about 2 minutes, just with them back and front bickering about the fact that Marcus has this Porsche car that's really expensive, but it doesn't have a cup holder. So it's all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I really liked the dynamic between them, and I thought it came across really well. And crucially, it maintained it for the whole film as well. Interestingly, I think Martin Lawrence was a bigger star in 1995 rather than Will Smith. Will Smith was not coming.
Actually. Yeah, you're right.
I think Will Smith, because Will Smith is second billed on this film.
So yes, do you know, I was thinking the Fresh Prince had been out by then.
Oh yeah, it had, yeah.
But actually, Independence Day and Men in Black and stuff like that was yet to come. No, so you're right. So he was maybe like the bigger star from TV, but Martin Lawrence would have been a bigger box office draw. You're right on that, actually. Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, that's why, and that obviously changed as the film franchise progressed, because Will Smith after that, this is a stepping stone for him. It was a name at that point, but he wasn't he couldn't. I don't think he could open a film at that point, but he was involved in a few things.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely fair. I think one of the things that strikes me about their dynamic in this film is the fact that there's lots of action sequences, but there's also, as you said, a lot of verbal sparring and a lot of comedy. And actually, they're both really good at both. I won't lie, I didn't actually like this film. It just wasn't for me at all. But I like the fact that they were able to keep up these sort of jibes, but balancing the action sequences. Did you feel the same? Because it's quite a blokey film.
Oh, it's a very blokey film, yes. The female characters here are really for plot reasons at the very most. There's not a lot of great character development with any of the female characters. It's very much a sort of laddie film, and that's the way it was taken at the time as well. It plays into very much 90s tropes in terms of these type of cop films, the two guys together, and I'm sure we'll talk about that again with the Die Hard film later on. But yes, it's very much of its time, this type of film, but they do maintain a nice balance between the two of them. But yes, it is it is a bit of a sausage fest.
Yeah, I just but one thing that did when I was watching it, all I could think of was 21 Jump Street in particular, and I feel like this type of film has sort of set the tone for like loads of buddy cop movies that we've seen, like right up until obviously present day. Do you think that that's the case? And also, would you have seen the film working with different actors in the lead role, or do you think it had to be these two to establish that dynamic? I mean,
it could have worked with different actors of sort of similar comic sensibilities coming from a comedic background. Because let's face it, Will Smith came from a comedy in terms of Fresh Prince. That was very much a 30-minute TV comedy show, which showcased his talents in terms of his musicianship and also his acting chops as well, and the way he could carry comedy, and there was like obviously wee bits of drama in there. Martin Lawrence I wasn't so familiar with, but this could have been really any two high caliber actors, because I think initially it was Eddie Murphy and Wesley Snipes were offered the roles in this film.
Ooh, is that maybe why they make a Wesley Snipes joke when they're getting
probably
yeah. Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a cheeky wee reminder of the fact he didn't take that. Yes, but yeah, it could have been a number of people, and the 90s were a sort of fertile time for these kind of films, and there is a legacy that, like you say, runs up to now. You could name dozens, if not hundreds, of films that have followed the same sort of, they're two cops, they're a bit maverick, they kind of do their own thing, they have a boss that shouts at them, But that kind of goes back again to the likes of Starsky and Hutch, a TV show, because it was the two detectives and the lieutenant that shouted at them all the time, saying, I've had enough of this shit, Starsky. Well, without swearing, obviously, but it's from that sort of time. So it's the late 70s fed into the 80s and the 90s for this type of relationship cop drama, if you like, I think, and it's just gone on ever since. Let's face it, it's never gone away.
And I do feel like what's really funny is when the opening credits started and you're sort of looking over the water to Miami and it's that really sort of heavy saturation of colour. I was like, this looks like the opening credits to CSI Miami, and all it was missing was like David Caruso. And then Internal Affairs shows up and it's Marge Helgenberger from CSI. So I was like, this is so strange how it's got that kind of vibe. But you can also see how, like, at that particular moment in time, I know CSI came a bit later, but like these, as you've said, these types of cop shows, cop dramas, like on the big screen, like these were very much like kind of bread and butter, I feel, for that period of time. And obviously that's continued on, like, as I say, to contemporary films, because all I could think of was 21 Jump Street. But you mentioned that we've obviously got quite a cast of characters here. We have Checky Cario as Fouché. Do you think he was a memorable 90s villain?
He was, actually. It's kind of, again, it's another trope that we see, the European bad guy.
Yeah, so that's sort of pan-European accent. You have no idea where he's from.
Yeah, you think he might be maybe a bit Dutch, maybe a bit French, Belgian, it's kind of in that sort of area somewhere. And it's never really explained, obviously, because it doesn't matter to the plot where he comes from. He's a bad guy, and he's a European bad guy, which at the time was very much in vogue. And I kind of blame Hans Gruber for that to a certain extent. But yeah, he was good in this role because he held back from the best of the bad guys. Don't go total Raj right at the start. They leave that for the end. They play it a bit cooler. They know the limits to which they can take things, and they delegate the responsibility for doing stupid stuff to their minions, which again in this case, and then they get angry with them, and you see a wee flash of violence or something like that where he is unhappy with one of his own employees, that kind of thing. We've seen it a million times before, but yeah, he was good in that. I liked that performance there as well, which was slightly let down by the very end, but we don't need to talk about that right here. But yes, what did you think of him?
It's funny because you mentioned Hans Gruber, and I feel like he's always going to be the sort of benchmark of where you compare other villains of that era to. So I did think he did a really good job. As I say, I recognised him from a BBC drama of all things, but I actually thought he was quite intimidating. As you say, he uses his henchmen to do the really bad stuff. Like, I particularly love that we get that obligatory sexy club scene where he's lurking in the rafters, making sure that everything's going smoothly as it should be. But I thought, don't get me wrong, I thought some of the armed goons were a bit useless, and I don't know how he had the patience for them, but I certainly thought that he was an intimidating presence, especially because, as you say, he didn't necessarily lose his temper, and he wasn't up for sort of playing games. He was just their bad guy doing bad guy stuff, and I quite appreciate he was a bit of a sharpshooter in that sense. But yeah, I feel like it's difficult because Gruber will always be the benchmark, and obviously we are talking about Die Hard with a Vengeance later. One thing I do think is quite interesting about this film is the portrayal of the police department. So obviously we start off with essentially with a heist, the break into the stash of heroin. We have internal affairs. We have a very angry boss. What did you think of the portrayal of the police department? It didn't really make me want to put my faith in them for the majority of this film.
No, it is a bit of a shambles on screen, which is basically a plot device in order for the Maverick cops to be able to go and do what they need to do. It's like even when they first turn up at the crime scene, where this is, I don't know if you meant, the drugs, when the drugs have been stolen, and they turn up at the crime scene and they'll look at how it's laid out, and Marcus says, who designed this room? Because there's a shaft that goes into the room from outside. It's just so obvious that that's something that they would do. And it's just so busy. There's so much noise, people doing things all over, and it's just chaotic. And like you say, people are just shouting all the time, and it doesn't seem organised in any way, and it's hot and it's sweaty, and they all seem to be cramped into this one sort of reasonably large room, but there's about 35 desks there, and you just don't know what's going on. And yeah, it didn't give you a sense that the police were in any way organised, and especially since they kept putting these artificial deadlines on things. Like the police lieutenant would say, right, you need to get this sorted because the FBI will be in. So we need something in 72 hours. And then they're told later on, the handover is going to happen in 4 days. And he says, you've got 2 days to fix it. And then another part, it was like, and there's 2 hours to the deadline. You're thinking, maybe if we were a wee bit more organised and got things done, rather than going to a bloody nightclub during one of the scenes, then that might help with sort of tempering the chaos a wee bit. But yeah, it was kind of all over the place. But I think that was the point of it.
Yeah.
More than anything.
It did make you wonder how they'd managed to bust $100 million worth of heroin in amongst all of this shit that's going on the daily. And also there was a couple of sort of lazy stereotypes, because obviously they don't want to be paired up with the Hispanic detectives as well. And that was very much sort of like a very 90s sort of reference to obviously like the Cuban community within Miami and that sort of thing. So I did think it was quite an interesting one, especially because, the mid-90s in America was obviously like you had like your Rodney King incident and stuff like that. And I know this is slightly before it, but it's interesting that it's not necessarily critiquing the police, but it's not glorifying them either. It sort of sits somewhere in between. And I think that's where that balance of action and comedy comes in as well. It's like kind of, you're laughing at them, but you're also sort of cheering on the two main characters to try and, resolve this situation, as you've said, within the 25 different deadlines that they're given throughout the film. But it's interesting because it does sort of couch itself sort of right in the middle. It's not saying these guys are all idiots, but it's not saying that, it's not sort of glorifying police work either. Because in a way, like Fishy is quite an interesting villain, and you just sort of wonder how he's potentially going to get away with things.
Yes, like I say, I think it's there to emphasise the fact that these cops may be mavericks, but they know what they're doing. There's a method there to it as well, even though it does get a wee bit convoluted at times. They know what they're doing, whereas everybody else just kind of shouts. And the police lieutenant, I don't know if you're specifically going to mention him out, but the way that he's portrayed as well doesn't give you a great deal of confidence in the department if that's the person that's actually running it as well. So
yeah, we will definitely chat about supporting cast, because I'm not missing out on an opportunity to talk about a young Michael Imperioli either. But as I've said, one of the big things of this film is humour, and quite a lot of the plot centres around the fact that Martin Lawrence spends his time pretending to be Will Smith in order to secure a key witness played by Tia Leone for the murder of Max, who is one of Will Smith's sort of clients in the film. How did you feel that sort of mix-up or swap idea kind of contributed to actually moving the story along? Because that's where the majority of the humour comes from, I would say.
Yeah, for maybe the mid period in the film, that's where it's all centred around the fact that they have swapped identity. Well, the Martin Lawrence character has taken the identity for plot reasons so that they can actually engage the witness and get sorted and everything. But yeah, it was there in order to have that fish out of water element as well, when he goes into the house and it's all, when he goes into his partner's house, because they're going to use that as a safe house, because the bad guys would never think to look at their own personal houses, So yeah, they wouldn't think about that in any way. And he can't find the light switch, and there's loads of pictures of his partner there and all that. And having to explain that was actually quite funny, saying, I'll put up a picture of him for every time that he saved my life and things like that. And there's loads of them. There's dozens of pictures. But even the fact that Marcus' character's living in this house and all he's got is pictures of himself in his house, which is really bizarre as well. I don't know anybody like that. I don't know. It's the same idea as Felix Buchanan in the Paddington 2 film. In his house, there's loads of Hugh Grant pictures everywhere in different stages of his life. It's that kind of idea. It's very sort of self-centered, isn't it? It's very sort of everything's about me kind of idea. But yes, I understand why they did that, because that filled out the second half of the film. without that, it would have been more of a sort of straightforward drama, and you wouldn't have had the ability to mix this up and have these be back and forths, and there was an eventual sort of four-way. People were saying, who are you and why are you here? And why is this woman here? And all this. And he's saying, well, baby, I'm undercover and all this sort of stuff. And, it's, it's just, again, it's something that could have been sorted out in 2 minutes if people would actually sat down and talk to each other, but that's not the point of films. And I see that more and more, the standard tropes, and that's one of them, the mix up or the lack of communication, which is understandable. But yeah, it was fun, put it that way. And it led to quite a few very good comic scenes because of that.
Yeah, and I do think that as much as I say, I kind of struggled with this film because I don't feel like it really engaged me that much, but maybe the 30-year sort of distance from actually watching it at the time probably hasn't helped. But I do think that you can't ever really accuse the comedy of undercutting the tension, because one of the scenes that I did really laugh at is when they go into that big sort of villa, and Martin Lawrence says to Will Smith, there's too much bass in your voice, you'll scare the white folks, you need to sound more like them. And then 2 seconds later, they find a dead body on a table, and it's like bloated and there's flies around it, and Martin Lawrence is really trying not to spew. But I actually found that quite funny because the setup is dramatic, and obviously you're anticipating not necessarily a jump scare, but a sort of reveal, as it were, but it's the comedy that sort of keeps you going throughout those scenes. So I do feel like it doesn't undercut any of the kind of more serious points of the film, but it is there to sort of keep you sort of engaged and moving along in what is, quite frankly, a bog standard sort of catch the bad guy type of film otherwise.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And it doesn't try to be anything else apart from that. It tries to have its own spin on it. So they do certain things. It's not set in New York. It's not set in Los Angeles. It's set obviously in Miami this time. And obviously, like you said, there's the whole thing about the 90s Miami with Hispanic community and all that. And it's somewhere different for them to actually shoot somewhere like this. They can have the shots where it's the ground is shimmering and everything because of the heat quite naturally. And then, like I say, like the sort of the oversaturated colours, the browns, and you see the plane going overhead, and it's been shot from a bridge, and there's a big Miami sign there as well. It's all just the sort of perfect shots for these things. While there's certain popular music types playing in the background, it's all kind of hip hop and dance stuff. It's all going, so yes, it just all kind of feeds into that, which is, it's been done, and it has been done loads of times since. I think partly to do with success of this, because anything that comes along and is successful tends to have a number of copycats to a certain extent afterwards. And I think this film was one of those, because it was a reasonably surprise hit, I think, based on the fact that it was Martin Lawrence and the young Will Smith. And Michael Bay at the time obviously was a successful director, but not the Michael Bay of the late 90s, 2000s, where it was like planet-sized productions that he was doing, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned, obviously, supporting cast. We have likes of Teresa Randall as Teresa Burnett. We have a young Michael Imperioli. We have Tia Leone. What did you think of the supporting cast sort of generally? I know that this really is the Will Smith and the Martin Lawrence show, but what did you think of the sort of supporting cast of characters that we have here? Yeah,
they were very much in the background, weren't they? They didn't have an awful lot to do. I kind of thought that Tia Leone was a wee bit miscast here.
Yeah, really for me.
Didn't really come across that well as the type of character she was supposed to be. And I like Tia Leone. She's very good as an actor, but she wasn't particularly good in this film. It was a bit of a cardboard cutout role. And the kind of things that she did, and the kind of things she was involved in as well, it was just kind of bizarre, because like she'd obviously witnessed a murder and managed to get away, and it's a very implausible way of getting away from a murder scene.
Absolutely fucking ridiculous. Yeah. I think that's where this film lost me, quite honestly.
Yeah, there just happens to be a river at the back of the house that she's able to jump at. It's like kind of okay, right? It could have been a swimming pool, but yes. And the bad guys are standing there watching her. Oh my God, when she jumps, and they go, and they get to the edge and they go, oh, I can't believe she jumped. That's quite a jump she's made and all that. And you're thinking, you're standing there with guns.
Shoot in the water.
Shoot.
Yeah.
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 And if nothing
Like I
else, you
said-
get somebody swimming in the water with these projectiles going down around her,
Yeah.
which is quite a cool shot. You see that quite a lot as well. But yes, and then her character would do stupid things like saying, well, yes, I'm safe just now being in this house, but I don't want to be here. I want to be out. So we'll go to the club in order to see. And you're kind of thinking, that would never happen. I know that the whole film would never happen. The way it happened, pretty much. But it was just a bit daft, and I just didn't think she came across particularly well in it, which is a bit of a shame because she has been in other stuff since and she's been very good. Michael Imperioli was very good in it. The small role that he had in it, he was excellent. I thought he was really good. He was quite funny, and he was like a wee sort of Weasley character, which again is something I haven't seen from him an awful lot. Definitely because he's an actor, he plays different roles, he inhabits different personas. But this is something I hadn't really seen him tackling. And it's obviously quite early in his career and everything. So it's nice to see these films and see these actors in these sort of early roles and see how they kind of tackle it before they do the roles that you're very familiar with and the way that they kind of hold themselves and the differences in what they do. So yeah, I thought he was good. The rest of the characters were kind of so much in the background that they were really hardly worth talking about. Apart from, is it Joe Pantoliano? What's his surname?
What's his name?
Pantoliano.
Sorry. Pantoliano, yeah. Sorry.
Yes, I forgot the end. He is basically doing his standard performance in that he's just shouting all the time. It's amazing the fact that there's a one-note register for him, and it's just this shouting. No matter what he's doing, he's playing basketball, he's shouting, he's angry. When he's at a crime scene, he's shouting, he's angry. When he's in the office, shouting, angry, every single place, apart from the very end, just before it's like the sort of the final showdown. He's very quiet then when he's asking for a favour from somebody and wants support, and it's just like, you need to get everybody here. We need SWAT, we need your support, and he's not shouting then, but every other time it's just this one-note performance, which, I mean, he does it very well, and it's quite memorable, obviously, but it's kind of a nothing role again. It's a thankless task that he had there doing that. So yeah, and the only big bit for him was the basketball scene where he was trying to shoot hoops and everything.
And why was that even in the film? There's so many, like I said, this film, I really struggled to pay attention to this film, which is really hard when you're supposed to be making notes and podcasting about it. But there were so many moments where I just thought, it was, first of all, it was quite repetitive because it was like you would go to X location, there'd be sassy back chat, escalating threats, jokes about swap lives, and then there'd be something like a wee burst of violence, and then it would just be go to another location. And the basketball thing really threw me because I was like, why is this in this film? Is it to prove, what was it trying to prove? I don't know. And then you had Martin Lawrence's wife, her character Teresa, who was just playing this horrible trope of a angry black woman who just wouldn't put out with her husband. It was just, it felt really sort of stereotypical for a lot of it. A couple of sort of, as you said, Michael Imperioli's good, but T. Leone I thought was horribly miscast. Her character, as you said, did loads of stupid things, and I just, as I've said, this is very much the Will Smith and Martin Lawrence show, but I did wonder if you struggled with the supporting characters as much as I did, because I just thought none of this is making sense to me, really. And on top of all that, you've got sort of action set pieces, which the lead two seem to be good at as well. I think they sort of just about carry that off. As I said, I wasn't sure about any of the goons because they seem to be collectively useless, which is a trope of sort of henchmen within these types of films. But what did you think of the action sequences then, given that there's quite a few characters in this film who we think are miscast?
Yes, like you say, the action scenes are really there for the two leads to excel and do their stuff. More Will Smith than Martin Lawrence. Will Smith seems as if he's a wee bit fitter than Martin Lawrence.
Yeah, he's willing to get his shirt fully open.
Oh, yeah, aye, and they make full use of that. There's a whole action scene where he's running and the shirt's flapping, and it's like 6 or 8 pack kind of idea. You kind of get the idea that this film was based around the action scenes. They come up with action scenes first. They had a kind of outline for the main characters, and they just kind of put the jigsaw pieces together in order to have it. And then, we need something to link an action scene in a nightclub and an action scene in an airfield. So how do we do that? You know, how do we change it up a wee bit so it's not like, oh, we've got a car chase later on in the film, so how do we do it earlier? We make it then that's a foot race. You know, there's a foot race element, because when that scene started and the bad guys got away in the car, and you're thinking, well, they're away and he's running, and you're thinking, well, he's never going to catch them no matter how heavy the traffic is. So, but they contrive it in such a way that the car crashes. They have to run. Everybody's on foot at that point. So yeah, you're kind of going, yep, okay. It's an interesting wee way of doing it, but you can tell that it's just all joined together based on, right, what sort of we've got a situation here. It's almost like they had a big mood board, and they had like airport scene, street scene, nightclub scene. You know, this is all your action beats here, and there'll be like wee lines, wee bits of red thread coming from it saying, insert comedy element here, insert shooting element here, insert insert fist fight here, that kind of idea. So it's, you know, and there was never any threat in any of the scenes. You just didn't think that there was going to be. You knew, well, I suppose that there's been 4 films or 3 and a bit. There's a new one coming out at some time, and you know that these characters are maintained for the rest of it. So there's not the same level of peril, but they don't even try to make it. You know, everyone around them is disposable, and they can go pretty much anytime, apart from Tia Leone. You know, she's not going to go either. But everyone else, there could be maybe one of their cop buddies, which they haven't really mentioned at all. They die, and then there's another reason for them to go after the bad guys, which doesn't happen here, but that was an option. I thought that might have come up, but yeah, it was fairly standard, even for something that's 30 years old and kind of had the opportunity to do something a little bit more, shall we say.
Yeah, because that scene that you're talking about when they're in pursuit, like he runs through an old lady hair salon, he then comes across a team of disabled basketball players, and then lots of trash cans, and then there's like this almost 360 shot of the two of them sort of rising from the ground, and it just felt so contrived. It was like, oh, let's have you running through some street scenes, and that'll be really cool because you'll have to dodge all of these nameless people, and it just, as you said, like if they up the threat levels a little bit and made it, because Bushy is a good villain. I think that's the thing. Like, but the threat level just doesn't deliver in a sense that you're never worried that those two are not making it to the end of the film, like at all.
Yes, yeah. There's a scene in the new Naked Gun film where it's a car chase scene. I don't know if you've seen it. It's not really spoiling anything. It's just a small joke. The car is an electric car, and it's been taken over by the baddie. And Drebin kicks out the windshield because he can't see anything because it's been covered with stuff. And he kicks out the windshield, and obviously like feathers and stuff come into the car and all sorts of things. But then you see 2 guys walking across the street with a replacement windscreen, which then attached. It's that kind of, you know, a contrivance in order to get it build attention against.
That is absolutely really class. Oh, that sounds way more fun than this film.
Yeah, and that kind of scene is taking the mickey out of these films as well, because that's the kind of thing that happens, only it's far more serious in the way that they do it. But yeah, it's just, even, I know it's 30 years old and it seemed a little bit tired, these kind of things, but I don't think it would have been much more vibrant at the time if I'd watched it then.
Oh, no, and I definitely feel that way as well. I think that the one thing you get, obviously, with it being a Michael Bay film, even if it is a sort of early Michael Bay film, is that you get that sort of big final stakeout, which in this case takes place in a hangar. There's lots of swirling 360s and quick cuts and gunshots, and the score gets a bit quicker. And then we have money flying around in slow motion. The big containers of ether are sort of unsubtly telegraphed at various points. There's lots of explosions. But you're kind of seeing like a Michael Bay development here. Like you look at this film and you know instantly it's one of his, although it's, as I say, quite early in his career. If you didn't know that this was a Michael Bay film, watching it, would you have got that sense straight away with the direction, the pacing, the cuts, that sort of style? Yeah.
Not until the big finale, the big denouement at the end. There are elements throughout the film there are elements of the type of shots, the lingering shots on females, for instance. There's a wee bit of that. There are, like I mentioned, the nice overhead shot of the plane, all that kind of thing, in the sign. There's some really nicely constructed shots, and there's also it's like the sort of modern equivalent of the interstitial cards. You know how you would get a card in between in a black and white film. They have shots like it's obviously then it was helicopter shots, but there's helicopter shots of the city and things like that.
Yeah, there's loads of those. Yeah,
it just breaks up the scenes. Just a nice transition from one to the other. So if I'd gone into that totally blind and said, watch this film and tell me then who it was directed by, yes, I would be able to say, yes, it was Michael Bay, but not from the first 3/4 of the film. There's maybe one, maybe two elements of like slow-mo running and the like you say, the camera being all over the place, going round and round. And you only get small snatches of that, but then when there's the scene, where's the big fight scene in the hangar, it's like he's just thought, right, I've been quite restrained here. You know, I know what I'm doing. I've constructed this really well. Now, where are all those other bits that I haven't actually thrown in? And he just chucks everything into this big fight scene at the end. It's all over the place. I couldn't follow it. It made there was no logical sense as to how this fight scene progressed, because you didn't know how many bad guys there were. There were just a bunch of bad guys.
Yeah.
You didn't know how it all kind of was coming together in terms of the setup and everything, and how actually what was you would get scenes and there'd be like people getting shot off of the wings of aircraft, and you didn't know why. You didn't know how they got there.
No, who they were, why they were there. Yep. They were just
bizarre, really bizarre.
Yeah, I definitely think that towards the end, you can tell, as you said, you can tell it's a Michael Bay film. There was less cuts than there was in Ambulance, for which I'll never forgive Simi. So that's staying there as the worst film I think I've ever watched. But I think definitely, as you've said, the city shots, the 360 shots, but then the chaos towards the end is where you can really sort of see his style emerging, I guess, if you can call it that. And especially, you know, the slow motion sort of walk away at the end, which is quite iconic in itself. I think that's where you start to see more of his sort of signature Michael Bay-isms, as it were.
Yes, totally. Yeah. It's a shame, because up until that point I was quite enjoying it in terms of the way that it was working, but it kind of just fell off a cliff towards the end of it in terms of how it was put together. And it, you know, it shouldn't do that. It should be a lot more smarter than that.
Definitely, and I think like it's a film that obviously tries to keep the energy up, and I think that's probably why you have that explosive ending. But as you say, it just doesn't work for a number of reasons, like largely because a lot of the plot or character decisions just don't make sense. So, but as I say, I struggled with this film sort of in general, so it's never going to be one of my favourites. One thing I did notice about it, obviously, is that there's quite a good score. It's quite propulsive. It feels quite pulse-like at moments in time. It's kind of rocky. You've got like sort of classic 90s R&B as well. And obviously we have a nightclub scene as well. Did you notice the score in particular? Was there anything that sort of stood out to you?
Score's difficult to miss, to be perfectly honest. Because it is just right in your face right from the start. The very first scene, you've got this music playing in the background, and it just seems to be there all the time. Not so much score, but the sort of the needle drops and everything. There is a lot of that going on, and it works because it's that kind of film. It keeps the sort of the pacing of it, if not the tension. It's got nothing to do with the tension or anything. It's because there is very little tension with the film. So it's the way that it does everything else with regards to the film. I think it works very nicely, but it's a bit of a, as far as I'm concerned, it's a bit of a kind of a nothing score, because one can just flows into the other. It doesn't really work as a cohesive unit the way that a score would, and it doesn't underpin the drama and everything. It's just there's so much action and drama that it just kind of piles in as well. It's fighting to find a space.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's as bombastic as the film is in terms of the chaos. And that sort of adds to it by adding just like more, I don't want to say noise, that's unfair to whoever scored it. But you know what I mean? It's another sort of layer of sound as well. So obviously this is a film with some quite iconic imagery. As I've said, all three characters walking away in slow motion at the end of the film has become one of the sort of defining images of Bad Boys. Were there any other sort of memorable scenes that stood out for you? Was there anything in particular that you thought, oh, that's really cool, I like that shot?
I enjoyed the sort of, I know it was a bit of a cliche and we've talked about it, but the four-way conversation when they're all in Mike's apartment and they're all trying to explain to each other about who they are and what they're doing. And what actually transpires from that is that it's only Mike and Marcus that were the ones who didn't realise. They knew, they'd obviously constructed the whole lie between them, but the other two had figured out, the wife had figured out, and the Tia Leone character, they'd figured out ages ago, and they were just like, well, just trying to keep, like, she was just trying to keep herself safe, so she was playing along with it because she knew they were cops. The fact that she thought they were cops in the first place was quite disturbing, but so I did like that scene, the way that the was the kind of back and forward between them. I thought that was quite a neat, nice wee scene, and I did like the scene where the Will Smith character, Mike, was basically babysitting. He was assuming the role of the husband, and they were sitting looking at with the Afro photos and all that, and all the stuff that happened around about that, where they had a fight because Marcus had come back because he thought Will Smith was actually in bed with his wife, so he came back to confront him, and they had a fight out on the lawn, and they actually push each other into a paddling pool, which is a kind of a different type of way of, like, usually it'd be like a big swimming pool or something.
Yeah.
The stupid thing, they were fighting a paddling pool. I did enjoy that. I thought that was quite memorable as well. And because there was people looking on, watching them going, the fuck are they doing? These guys are going to take each other out. So I did like that. I thought that was very funny, and it fitted in with what they'd built up in terms of the way the characters reacted. But in terms of the action scenes and stuff, it was just kind of, yeah, we've kind of been here before with these things. And it's the usual, somebody gets shot in the leg. One of the main characters is shot in the leg, but he can still walk afterwards. And he's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. It's just a flesh wound that has gone right through his leg.
It's so Monty Python. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre. I know it's a standard trope, but every time when you see that now, and I didn't think about it before, but it was I'd seen a program and it was somebody saying, see if you get shot in the shoulder, that's really fucking serious. That's not just, they don't just go, oh yeah, I'll work out the kinks in that in a couple of weeks, let's go and get a beer. So, the person that was describing that was saying, that's life-threatening. That's not a small, because there's so much going on up there, in terms of like blood flow and everything to your head and everything and all that, and your arm and all sorts of stuff. So, plus your shoulder would get completely wasted. But yeah, it's just.
Yeah, I do. I mean, honestly, in terms of memorable for the wrong reasons, I do think Max's death is far too funny to be a dramatic turning point in the plot. It is like something out of a bad telenovela, like the way that it cuts to her screaming and falling to the ground, and you've got Tia Leone sort of peering through the little gap in the walls. That actually made me laugh, so that was memorable for the wrong reasons. But like you, I really liked the scene where Will Smith was going through the family photos with Teresa. I thought that was really funny, but I actually just really liked the opening scene. I thought in terms of setting up who those two characters were, Will Smith's character seen as the sort of trust fund rich boy who doesn't actually need a job. He only cares about his image, car, whereas Martin Lawrence is like the kind of family man who's desperate for a sandwich and is whole. I thought it actually set them up really nicely.
That's such a good way to describe that.
It's like what it is. Exactly what Michael Bay had up on the mood board, I assure you. But I thought I did a really good job of establishing that, and then did nothing with that for the rest of the film, which was really frustrating. As I've said, I really struggled to stay focused and engaged with this, but I can also understand and appreciate why this had box office appeal. Like 90s cinema really did enjoy sort of mindless boy violence, and that's essentially what this is. So if you can take anything from it, I know it's beloved by loads of people as well, and it's seen as a sort of like iconic classic because of, as I say, lots of slow motion walking away and all that sort of thing. But for me, it just didn't tick any particular boxes. So in this case, this would not be a recommend from me, but as I say, I understand why it's had this appeal and why obviously there's been loads of sequels as well, and it's, you know, they're still performing well at the box office. I believe they're on Netflix just now? Is that where they are? Do they all live there? Yeah. So I can totally understand why it has, you know, a sense of nostalgia and an appeal for some people, but just unfortunately not for me. Would you recommend this film on a first time watch only?
I don't think so. There are so many better examples of this type of film. It would only be recommended if you're sort of a Will Smith completist and you wanted to see everything he's done and see how he developed into the lead actor that he is. And this is obviously a very big stepping stone for him, but no, I actually don't think I would recommend this film.
It's a rare two no's on this podcast.
I know.
Is there anything else you would like to add about Bad Boys?
No, I think we've kind of covered those bad boys quite nicely now, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. So let's move on then to Die Hard with a Vengeance, directed by John McTiernan and written by Jonathan Hensley and Roderick Thorpe.
In the hands of a mastermind of terror.
I want to play a game with Lieutenant McClane.
What kind of game?
Simon Says.
The path to revenge leads straight to John McClane.
If we don't do it, this guy says he's going to blow up another public
Well, why me? What has he got to do with me?
I have no idea. He just said it had to be you.
It's nice to be needed.
Simon Says, get to the payphone in Wall Street Station by 10:20, or the number 3 train and its passengers vaporize.
I'm not jumping through hoops for some psycho. That's a white man with white problems. You deal with it. Where the hell are you going, McClane? I know what I'm doing. Not even God knows what you're doing.
This guy wants to pound on you till you crumble.
Are you aiming for these people? No. Well, maybe that mime.
John McClane, played by Bruce Willis, is now basically a full-blown alcoholic and is suspended from the NYPD. But when a bomb goes off in a department store, the police basically need to bring him in to figure out what's going on. Soon, a man called Simon, played by Jeremy Irons, calls and asks for McClane. Simon tells the inspector that McClane is going to play a game called Simon Says, and that if he doesn't do the tasks he assigned him, he'll set off another bomb within a school. With the help of a Harlem electrician named Zeus Carver, played by Samuel L. Jackson, John McClane must race all over New York trying to figure out the frustrating puzzles that the crafty terrorist gives him. But when a bomb goes off in a subway station right by the Federal Reserve, which just so happens to be the biggest gold storage in the world, things start to get a little bit heated. So, John, I assume this is not your first time watching Die Hard with a Vengeance.
No, I've seen it a number of times. I look back. I've got a list on Mubi. I keep a list of the films I watch on their profile section. And since I started the recording stuff back in 2012, I've noted I've seen this film 3 times since then, and I've seen it before then as well. So I have seen it on a number of cases. Last time I saw it was maybe about 7-8 years ago, but I have seen it a number of times, and I was familiar, very familiar with most of it. And obviously, if you watch the film a few times, then there's watchability factor that comes into it, as well as familiarity factor, I suppose, as well. So what about yourself? Have you seen this?
Yeah, so I think this is my second or third time watching this. But again, the last time I watched this was several years ago. But again, I have a real soft spot for this film and the franchise. I know it takes a dip sort of from here onwards, but I really like this film. So I'm excited to talk about this, obviously in contrast to Bad Boys, which I just couldn't get on board with. So first of all, let's talk about Bruce Willis. He's back. He's in his vest. It starts off pristine white. You know it's not going to end that way. How do you think his portrayal of sort of John McClane has evolved over the first and second films to get us to this third one?
Yes. I like the way you phrased that, because by the third film, there is no development really in his character whatsoever. Everything has been... basically because there's very few places for him to go in terms of the character at this point, because he's been through the ringer twice. It's affected his marriage. So the fact that he's starting this film and he's estranged from his wife and he has... Again... substance problems. He's a bit of an alky at this point, and he's quite happy. He seems to be quite happy in doing that, and he's also been suspended because of the methods used, which is not really unreasonable given some of the things he did in the first two films. So you kind of get, yeah, it would probably be a bit of a loose cannon at times if he's just doing sort of normal police work. So there's no real need for him to progress during this film at all. He's a bit down with the character at this point. He knows what he's doing. He knows what all the character beats. So there's no development in this film at all in terms of him, apart from a wee tacked on bit towards the end. But it still is good. And because the character has been so well established, there's no need for any backstory. There's no need to like sort of go into a big reminder about his marriage or anything, because so many people have seen the first two films. They know the type of character he is. They know the situations he's been in. So you can just drop him into that after the initial explosion and the fact that he is asked for by name to get involved in the situation as well. So yeah, it's all good. You don't need anything.
Yeah, he's just cynical, a bit grumpy, and part of me's like, but by rights, you would be. You know, he's been through every sort of conceivable piece of shit over the past few years. It's all right that he's just a bit sort of mardy in this. But of course, they pair him with Zeus, who's played by Samuel L. Jackson, which is quite a big name to come into the franchise. What do you think of their chemistry? We've obviously talked about buddy cops in the first film with Bad Boys. What do you think about their chemistry? Because they're essentially forced together in this film.
Yeah, it's a forced pairing, and it's the first pairing in the Die Hard series in any meaningful way. It has like a couple of interactions with people in the previous films, but this is pretty much from the start right to the end. These two are forced together due to the fact that Simon says he wants them to be together after the initial interaction in Harlem. And it works really well because the Samuel Jackson character of Zeus is a smart guy. He doesn't take any shit, and he doesn't particularly like white people, and he doesn't like cops. So immediately they're rubbing up against each other, and they give as good as they get, both of them. There's no master and student kind of thing here going on, which is sometimes a buddy cop thing as well. The John McClane character has to be quite careful what he says, because Zeus keeps calling him out for being white and for being a policeman and for being a horrible human being. And he knows that he can't say something back to him, because then he'll just get another thing back saying, "Oh, so now it's discriminatory, you know, now you hate black people." And also he's very good at turning that sort of stuff around. I just thought it was great. It's a fantastic character, and it was very well introduced as well. The fact that, I mean, the first time you see him, he's got a shop, so you know he's got a business mind. He's talking to kids. He's telling them not to handle stolen goods, you know, that kind of thing. So he's got a set of morals about him, and he interjects when he could quite easily have just stood back when John McClane's standing out in the middle of Harlem with the big sign around his neck. So it introduces this character who has a certain amount of compassion. He has a certain morality to him, but it doesn't take any shit from anybody, which I thought, it's something a different dynamic.
Yeah, I think the introduction is phenomenal. As you say, he's sort of giving those kids a life lesson on, you know, don't sort of like lower yourself, don't handle anything that you shouldn't be, get to school, obviously you need to learn, etc. I still think that sandwich board reveal is so shocking in this film. Like, it genuinely makes me gasp every time I've seen it. It really is like a proper, like, oh my god, I can't believe they did that. But I think it really establishes the dynamic between the two very well. As you've said, this is obviously very intelligent, and we see that throughout the film. He's the one that can solve these puzzles. John McClane's fucking hopeless. His brain is probably too full of Jack Daniels at any given moment. But I also think it lets us see that Zeus is actually a fully fleshed out character. Like, he has a home life, he has a business, but he's also willing to stand up for when he knows something's about to like go wrong. In this case, obviously, John McClane's about to get his arse handed to him for wearing that particular sandwich board. So it shows you, as you said, the moral compass is there. So I think he's a really interesting character in the sense that, unlike a lot of the secondary characters in Bad Boys, like, we do get a full sense of his life and who he is as a person quite quickly.
Oh yeah, definitely, yes. Yeah, like you say, he's fully formed. He's not a younger man or anything, so there's that element to him. He's had a bit of experience about him. The whole thing about the sandwich board thing as well was when they actually shot it, it was blank, and they added in the words.
Yes, I read that because I thought, how the fuck did they get away with that?
Yeah, but they changed it for the TV version. They changed it to I Hate Everybody for the TV version because it was so controversial,
right.
which still worked. You would still
Yeah.
get a reaction for that, and a lot of people remember it that way because they saw it on TV rather than the film. And then when you actually see, like I watched it on Disney Plus and the original, you kind of go, whoa, okay, because you've got to remember, like you mentioned in the previous review of Bad Boys, this is around about the time of Rodney King, and even Rodney King's actually name-checked during this film as well. So there was an awful lot of tensions going about between police and ethnic minorities within the US, not just the African American community. It was all of them. It was Hispanic community. It was all sorts that were getting abuse from the police, and this, for a blockbuster film, directly mentions it, which is quite unusual. You've got to say that it's not the kind of thing that you'd think it would be the kind of thing they steer away from rather than running towards. So,
no, but the shock factor, I think, definitely holds up. And as I say, every time I watch it, I gasp because I just think I cannot believe that that's there in black and white. So, but at the heart of this film, we have obviously the villain, Simon, played by Jeremy Irons. And it is revealed that he has rather a strong link to Mr. Hansgruber of Nakatomi Plaza. So how do you think Jeremy Irons' character compares to his brother Hans from the original Die Hard? Is he more theatrical, more strategic, more menacing? Do you think he's a credible threat in this film?
Oh, he's definitely a credible threat in this. From his, what would you call it, silver tips in his hair? I don't know.
And a slight mulleting going on at the back.
It's quite a hairstyle to begin with, so it kind of stands out, and you go, that's the European right there. That's not the fact he's able to pull off a pretty decent American accent, obviously, is part of his character and everything as well. But the fact that as soon as you hear him, you've got this menace about him. So yes, I think he's not quite up there in terms of the subtlety of Hans Gruber, but it's not that far off it, to be perfectly honest. And you get the idea early on that he has actually been part of like a military outfit, more of a, he was like, was it East German intelligence?
Yes, they show him in the uniform.
Yeah, well, it's a really bad picture of him in the uniform. But But yeah, so there's probably more of a menace with him because of his military background, and you can tell, like his brother, he is fully in charge of everything. He's all over everything, and he's a leader of men, which is essential for your top-notch bad guys. They have to be able to tell the other people what to do and have the menace that they will deal with people if they don't do what he says. Like the character in Bad Boys, because he gets really pissed off with some of his guys because they don't do the right thing and they don't actually listen properly. And he's kind of the same. He is very much of the opinion that this is my show, this is what we're doing here. So yeah, I thought it came across pretty well.
Yeah, I think so. I think that actually what's quite effective is that we're about an hour into the film before Jeremy Irons actually gets screen time. So I thought having him sort of over the phone, what made me laugh was like the St. Ives riddle. I was like, I actually know the answer to this one because you've done it maybe in school. But I thought he's obviously, from the offset, you're like, well, he's obviously very clever because he likes setting these tasks. But you kind of get the understanding that there's an element of distraction going on. He knows if he can keep the police busy, he's obviously able to undertake what he really wants to do. He also works a vest, in the same way that John McClane does, just a slightly different style of vest. And what did make me chuckle was you've mentioned to sort of goons and henchmen, they all have terrible 80s Soviet bloc haircuts as well. So that's not gone away from the first film. But what I think makes him sort of more dangerous, I guess, is the fact that he's obviously there for revenge. He's not just there because he wants to go and steal gold. He's there because he knows who John McClane is. He knows what John McClane's done, and therefore he's there to sort of enact revenge for his brother. So I do think that he is an effective villain because, he's intelligent, he's unpredictable, and he's got this vendetta that he's clearly running throughout the film as well. So like I say, I've got a real soft spot for this film, and I love the fact that they link it back to Hans, because you do get that glorious little callback shot to Hans falling off the tower as well, which will never make me happy. It's just so good. Apparently
Alan Rickman didn't want that used in the the film.
Oh, no!
He didn't want it to be associated with the third film in case the third film didn't do particularly well, and therefore spoils the legacy of the first film. So for
Right.
a long time, he, through his lawyers, was saying, no, you can't use the footage of this, but eventually he relented, and he is actually credited in the film.
He is, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that he'd gone to great lengths to get that sort of removed. Oh, wow. Because I do think like this is a great example of, you know, we're 3 into a franchise here, and it's still a very good film. Like, it holds up. I love I think it's because there is such a strong villain, because I really love the scene where he's like assembling the troops, and you've got like the trucks, the costumes, and all the footsteps are in time to the animals came in 2 by 2, or is that what that?
Oh, it's it's similar. It's when Johnny goes marching home.
Yeah, and they all sort of and it adds to that sort of militaristic thing that you've hinted at as well. Like, I think that he's such a good villain that's what keeps this film sort of engaged and entertaining, as well as obviously the sort of central pairing. So it's a shame that Alan Rickman sort of fought against it, because I didn't realise that that'd be the case, because it is a good addition.
Oh yeah, of course.
So obviously we talked about the police in Bad Boys, the Miami-Dade Police Department. How do you think the NYPD are portrayed in this film?
They are slightly better in this film. There's still the office chaos going on, because after the first bombing, there's all sorts going on, and the police lieutenant is trying to direct things, and there's bits of paper getting handed to people and all sorts of things, you know. So it takes one of his assistants to say, you better take this call, and she's going, no, I've not got time, and it's just, you better take this call. I really think you know. So there is that, but there's callbacks to all that as well, because every time Simon phones in, and when they're in the police office, there's so much noise going about. The lieutenant has to say at some point, look, can you just shut up out there, you know, keep it down, because there's just so much distraction. Whereas, I mean, he could have closed the door, just saying, you know. But
yeah.
That's where an open door policy doesn't do anybody any good, you know. So, but yes, they weren't portrayed as being complete imbeciles, because they were reacting to situations, and they're reacting in a way that Simon wanted them to react. So by him saying there's a bomb in a school, I'm not going to tell you what school it is, they have to react to that. They have to go out. So everything was organised. And there's a wee scene there where they're told there's a bomb in a school somewhere, and the police lieutenant brings together all these sort of disparate elements of police and public servants and says, this is what we're going to do. We've got 2.5 hours. We need people to go through this. We need everybody. We need janitors. We need all sorts. We need to close off roads. We need to do this, but we need to keep it quiet, because we don't want a mass panic in our hands. And he directs everybody, and there's no callback from anybody. Nobody argues with them. They all just go, yeah, fair enough. We all go and do that. And that's kind of showing this guy is like really organised. He's done this sort of thing before. He's done the training, that kind of thing. So yes, it's good in that way. And the fact that they brought in a psychiatrist as well.
Yes.
To sit in with the calls when Simon phoned in, so that they could get a second opinion on what he's actually saying. He's sort of reading in between the lines, rather than just the police deciding. Now, a police negotiator, that kind of idea, would have filled the same role, but obviously they thought, no, bring in a psychiatrist, because at the same time he can analyse John McClane that's sitting there in the corner, which was a nice wee touch. But yes, I thought they were far more organised than the other film that we talked about.
Yeah, I think there's definitely that sense that although they're being misled purposely by Simon, he wants to create this distraction. As you've said, the way they organise themselves around the school, like, I did think, and again, given what's happened in the world this week, I did think that when, you know, Graham Greene's character goes in and pretends to be like from the fire department, and he gets them all to do a drill, that was really tense for me, because I thought, God, that is the reality for so many American schools, and here it is, you're seeing it on screen, and he's safely trying to evacuate them out the building. But as you've said, there's a lot more cooperation from different agencies. They accept what McCobb says, like, you know, I'm directing you here, you do this. He manages to sort of keep the television chaos at bay as well, although I did appreciate the fact that when all the phone lines are going absolutely mental in the police department, and one of the colleagues says, oh, listen, it's all going to work out, and the secretary says, yeah, and I'm going to marry Donald Trump. I was like, oh, that joke's not aged particularly well. And also it did make me think, did he pay to have his name mentioned in that film. That
He would
feels like
have to
something
have
he would
approved
do.
it,
Yeah. So that felt like something he would definitely do. But that made me chuckle. But that's perhaps maybe the only time. Like, it's not there are moments of humor, but it's not a film that leans on humor the way Bad Boys does.
No.
Do you think that's necessary? Do you think that it needed a little bit more sort of like sassy personality in it? Because you do get a little bit of back and forth between McClane and Zeus, but do you feel that would have undercut the sort of seriousness of the villain and the stakes if it had been too sort of buddy cop?
Yeah, there's a level that you have to kind of maintain between the seriousness, and I know that isn't a serious film because it's a buddy cop thing, we're talking about, but there has to be a balance. If you have too much slapstick, then you're into full-on comedy, like the other guys, the Will Smith. No, sorry, not Will Smith. Yeah, the Mark Wahlberg film. That just is a comedy about two cops. So you can kind of drift into that sort of territory unintentionally, and you're taking away from all the action beats and things like that, and because you're expecting something stupid to happen during the action beats because it is a comedy, which, you know, it would undercut it in such a way that you wouldn't enjoy it as much. You wouldn't watch it again, I don't think, to the same extent. It wouldn't be a film that I would watch 2 or 3 times if I knew that the action scenes were these sort of wacky ones where and again, there's very little tension and that sort of thing when it is a wacky thing, because you know it's done more for laughs. And if you're going to do that, then make yourself a Naked Gun film. You know, you may as well go all out.
Exactly.
So, yeah, you do have to maintain that. So I think they did get the balance right. They didn't overplay their hand, but they did come back to that particular well a few times, which was fine. Yeah,
like I particularly liked when they were doing the water jugs quest and they had to work out obviously how to get the correct amount of litres, and then they both walk away and Zeus says, like, are you not going to pick that up? And it's the bomb that's left in the suitcase, and he's like, oh yeah, because there's kids around, and he goes to go. So there was moments where it was a bit more lighthearted, but definitely the stakes feel genuine in this film as well. And in contrast to Bad Boys, the time limit is the time limit. Like there is a hard deadline to all of this. It's not just like, oh, maybe in a few days or whatever. This is all going down within like the space of like 24 hours. So you mentioned obviously the action sequence. What did you think of, for example, like the subway explosion, or any of the sort of the big set pieces that have gone on through this film? I will say that some of the green screen has aged a bit poorly, but I think it's forgivable.
Yes, for a film that was made 30 years ago and used CGI, it has its moments where it doesn't look quite right. There's a few wee bits, but you've got to remember there's still a lot of practical effects and everything going on there as well. So yes, I think that it does kind of, you're forgiving it because of what you're actually watching as well. So you're not really concentrating on that. But yeah, the action scenes were pretty decent. I thought the subway one was particularly good because it was kind of extended in that they had to try and catch up with the train and everything, and what he was doing on the train and how he actually got into the train in the first place was quite good. Like the standard clinging onto the side of the train, and there's a sign coming, you need to get out of the way, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I liked all that. And then obviously it takes a little bit of a pause when he's searching for the device actually on the train and all that, and then obviously you get a big explosion and stuff going on. And the film was convincing enough in that there was reasons why McClane was on the train and Zeus was in the platform and all that as well, and how that all worked out, and the fact that even during all that and everything that was going on, there was still an element of Zeus was going to try and answer the phone, but the policeman was wanting to shoot him because he jumped the barrier, and he was saying, I need to answer the phone. I need to do this now. So yes, it was, so they mixed it up. It just wasn't completely full on action like the end scene in Bad Boys, which was just all over the place. And there was hundreds of things happening. It was paced nicely, so you knew exactly what was happening, how it was all laid out, and why people were there and what they were doing. So there was a story. It followed the story rather than just action for action's sake.
Yeah, I think so, because I think that the initial bomb in the street, I think, is quite scary as well, given the again, to come back to sort of the world we live in sort of thing. But we've now seen this in real life, whereas maybe that wasn't as much of a threat back in the mid-90s.
Well,
whereas...
no, you say that, but the month before this film came out was the Oklahoma City bombing.
Oh, shit, yeah.
And during the publicity for the film, Bruce Willis says, "I will not be taking any questions about the Oklahoma City bombing because what we did here was a film for entertainment and it's nothing like real life. So I wouldn't want to demean what happened in the Oklahoma bombing and sort of relate to that to an entertainment device anyway. So no questions." And the film company Fox actually put out publicity and saying, yes, this film does have a bombing at the start of it. It was well in advance of what happened in Oklahoma City, and we are still including it because it's vital for the plot of the film. But we fully realise that this has happened in real life as well. So it wasn't as common, like you say, in the 90s, getting that same sort of thing. But yes, it was there, unfortunately, with this one.
Oh, yeah, and timing-wise, and fair play to Bruce Willis. That's a very respectful answer, not conflating a vehicle of entertainment for like a genuine tragedy. That's really respectful. I think that definitely as I said, the stakes in this film feel a lot higher, and part of it is because it's so rooted in the city, and obviously New York's very heavily populated, so the threat level to the sort of wider city population, not just what John McClane's getting up to, feels different. And in that sense, the action in this film feels bigger than perhaps, the first film in particular. Obviously the second film takes place in an airport. It feels sort of like it's more sort of out in the real world as opposed to a contained location. Do you think?
Yeah, well, everything about the film is busy. Like the bombing at the start happens in a busy street, and that sets up basically the whole story. The threat level was there right from the start because they're not making demands or threats. They've already shown what they can and will do. The threat is real because they've already carried out one bombing. They're saying, see that, we will do that again, but we can do it on a bigger scale because we've got the stuff to do it. And pretty much every scene in the sort of first hour in this film, it's busy. There's loads of people around, whether it's in a police station, whether it's out on the street. One of the things is they have to get from one part of the town to another. And it's almost impossible because the traffic's so heavy, because the city's so busy, and they have to go through the park and all that to try and do it. And that just emphasises the fact that this is a metropolitan area. It's not easy to evacuate. And if you try to evacuate, there'd be mass panic. So, and that would lead to even more gridlock and people being in danger. So yes, there was that all the way through just because of the location. And you've got to remember, this is the first film that's actually set in John McClane's hometown. Previously, it was LA, and then obviously the second one was in Chicago Airport. So it's not been, this is Die Hard in a city, So.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but I think that's why I like this so much as well, because as I say, it feels very real, and as you said, that everywhere's so busy that you just think, how on earth are they going to pull this off? They can't even travel a few blocks within the time frame that Simon gives them because the traffic's so bad and whatever. So I think that it just really adds to the overall sense that this is all very sort of real. And we have a sort of, without giving too much away, a sort of dramatic final showdown on land and in the air. And of course, we get the famous yippee-ki-yay motherfucker at the end of it, which you've been waiting the whole film for, but it happens. What did you think of how it all comes together at the end?
I liked the initial ending with all the stuff on the boat and everything.
Yes.
But then when they did a second ending after that, I kind of thought that takes away from it. Now, I know they had production issues in that there was another ending that was supposed to happen months after the events actually in the city, and it was going to be set in Europe somewhere, and there was going to be a showdown. Was it McClane says? That's what they were going to do. So it was going to be different, but they did this ending, and I thought they could have ended it before then. That's the problem. They could have ended after the first one, and it would have been just a few wee touches, and it would have been all nicely tied up. But the fact that they had to do this other bit as well, it did take away from it a wee bit. But the first ending was really good, and it was very dramatic and everything. And I like the fact that they had to swing to get onto the boat and all this sort of stuff from a bridge. So I thought, it's just, it's standard. And they actually did it. They actually had a car going off the bridge and swinging, and it wasn't done with any CGI or anything. It was all real. So the fact that it was a decommissioned bridge, so it wasn't as if it was like they were cutting off transport links for weeks at a time. It's something that wasn't going to be used anymore. But yeah, I thought that was particularly good. I enjoyed that, and the beats within that as well, them actually being on the boat and everything, and even down to the fact that when he gets on the bridge of the ship and he's standing there with them all, I think it's Zeus is standing there with them all, and Simon's eating a boiled egg. You're thinking, how bad guy is that?
I know.
When did he boil them?
No, and did he peel them himself, or was that one of the goons that did that? Yeah, so many questions.
You think he's got a checklist of all the things, like, steal money from the Federal Reserve, work our way through the tunnel, make sure that the tunnel gets flooded, eggs, give everybody money so they can go through the tolls, get them on the boat.
Yeah, quick 5 minutes to pump your bird in the office. Just, there was a lot going on in that boat. But you're so right. Like, I preferred that ending to the helicopter thing. Felt very rushed at the end. It felt cobbled together, and I think you can tell that there was obviously meant to be another ending to that film. Like, it doesn't feel kind of as organic, perhaps, as the boat did. I mentioned earlier on that we have, and you correctly identified it as When Johnny Comes Marching Home. There is quite an interesting score throughout the film. It's Michael Kamen who does the score to this. What did you think of that in comparison to the bombast of Bad Boys?
It was very different, wasn't it? It was more of a gentler background score, because I could tell that it was Michael Kamen, because Lethal Weapon 2 used some similar elements in the acoustic guitar, the wee acoustic, the sort of lamenting acoustic guitar bits in it for a wee sort of sad bit or anything, which, once you've heard that once, you kind of go, yeah, I know what that is, that's fine. But yes, it was more in the background, and it changed the music to, I know this is what it's supposed to do, but it changed the music to suit who was actually on screen. So when you had the bad guys on screen, the boys like Johnny Come Marching Home, there was militaristic, it was all timpani and marching music, snares and everything. So, and it was very working in time. It was all part of the plan. This is what we're doing, picking up gold, all this sort of stuff. So it worked very well in that way. And then it changed when it was chase sequences with McClane in a car or whatever, So, and that was more your standard kinetic orchestral music, rather than just these elements that used a particular song that was very well known and it felt very military in a way, because obviously these guys are all ex-military people and everything as well. So yeah, I thought it worked quite well, and it was a million miles away from the Bad Boys soundtrack. I don't think there was really any sort of like needle drops in this film. There may have been one or two, but nothing really significant.
Yeah, I thought this worked really, really well. And I like the fact that the Die Hard films in particular take sort of well-known pieces of music and obviously sort of tweak them into whatever's going on screen. And you do get that sort of like kind of strings score initially when there's a lot of drama, but a lot of it feels kind of propulsive, but never in your face and never at the expense of like dialogue or anything else that's going on in the film. So I think it works really, really well. It also
there was a wee reference to song Flowers on the Wall, which was on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, which both Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson was in. There's a wee bit in there because he says, "What were you doing when you were?" He says, I wish I was just sort of still suspended because I was just smoking cigarettes and watching Captain Kangaroo," which is a line from that song, which is on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack, which I thought was a nice wee touch.
That is so neat. I love stuff like that. That's proper like pub quiz trivia that I'm going to store so that I know that I have that forever. What would you say about the film's pacing in terms of like maintaining momentum, keeping you engaged right up until the end? How do you think it sort of manages that in terms of the performances and everything else that we've talked about through this pod?
I think it works really well because it's on a timer almost from the very start. As soon as John McClane's introduced, they're on a timer. They know that they've got some 6 hours, 7 hours. It's first thing in the morning, and then school's going to blow up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So, like you said before, it's a hard
deadline.
Yeah, it's a hard deadline. This is your window. So there has to be a natural progression towards that. And of course it's going to be at pace because they're given all these wee mini deadlines in between us, and you've got 20 minutes to get to the next phone booth in order to answer it. Otherwise this bomb's going to go off or whatever. You know, there's certain small deadlines that they have to meet every single time. So the film is paced according to that, and it always seems to be they're in a bit of a rush in order to get anywhere because the deadlines are quite tight, if not impossible to actually meet sometimes. So yeah, and it keeps it going. And they split the two main characters up at one point in order to be able to do different things like that as well. And then they naturally come back together again, which again worked perfectly within the story itself. So yes, I thought it worked really well. And there were the wee sort of pauses that you would have because you just can't have this as full-on action. It's very difficult to do that. Yeah. One of the only films I've seen that actually can do that is the Ben Wheatley film Free Fire. Whereas you've got like a 15-minute introduction and then you've got an hour and a half of a gun battle, which works really well, but it's a sort of an outlier. It's very difficult to do that sort of thing. Whereas here, yeah, you have your wee ups and downs. You have like introduction of other characters, more police characters, that kind of thing, the police lieutenant and all this. So they get small bits, and the stuff at the school specifically doesn't have McClane or Zeus there. It's the Graham Greene character who he's the one that is in the school, so that's all completely separate as well. So, and that allows you to kind of reset from this frantic pace. There's still a timer on it, but it's a wee bit more organized. It's not quite as frantic as it was. You know, you've just got all the kids in the big hall and all that, and it works nicely. But it changes the pacing, but it doesn't detract from the overall film in any way, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that you're right. The splitting the characters up actually really helps because they're off on different tasks, but they're still moving the drama and the story forward. So they have to complete, obviously, these different things in order to try and save what they believe is the school. So I think it is really, really well paced because of the task situation. Like, you are engaged in every single sort of problem that they have to solve. And in the meantime, you're treated to glimpses of like Gruber's heist that's going on underground as well. So, and obviously it makes full use of the sort of New York City landscape as well. You are getting treated to different sections of the city, which keeps things quite interesting as well. So I think it definitely holds you right up until the end, even if the ending itself does feel a bit sort of naff. Well, the second ending, the first ending's good. The second ending, you're maybe like, this could have been wrapped up 10 minutes ago, but that's by the by. Are there any scenes in this film that you think are sort of iconic or memorable? I feel like Die Hard, the first one, obviously gives us several of those. Do you feel like that by the time we get the third into the franchise, do you feel like you're still getting that sort of those iconic scenes?
Yeah, there are a couple. The previous one that I mentioned with Zeus and the police officer on the platform, that was a very good scene because it was like, you would see the policeman, his hand was shaking, you could see Zeus, and he wasn't exactly confident he wasn't going to get shot either, but he was, you know, he was more forthright, and I liked the back and forth there. I thought that was very good. In terms of action scenes, I liked the one in the big tunnel where the bad guys had released all the water, and he's trying to drive this big truck and get out, and then the way that they actually work that is the water comes up and you see him.
I love that.
Big spout, and he's at the top. You can see him going, and it doesn't look glamorous at all. And I thought that was really good. So they were the kind of standouts for me. I thought they were probably the best. There was a lot of action in it, but they were kind of the best scenes, and obviously the very open scene as well with him with the billboard on, which or the placard, I should say. Yes, very good indeed.
I also really like the scene where they go to apprehend the two young boys who've just stolen from the shop. He's like, he says something like, it's Christmas, you could steal City Hall. So then they steal their bikes and leg it as well. And the kids are throwing the stuff that they've stolen at them. So I thought that was really good. And like you said, the water scene is up there with one of my favourites in this. I thought this was so good. But I just think that even just that sort of marching scene where you've got all the various troops sort of arriving, I think is so well coordinated and so well executed. I think it's just really, really well done. And actually, this is, as I say, one of my sort of favourites in the franchise, probably because it does hark back to the first one as well. So would you recommend this film? Do you think that our listeners should go on a Die Hard deep dive and get this far into the franchise?
Oh, absolutely. 1, 2, 3 are all classics. You should watch them all, and this is pretty much up there with the first two. I think it's a great film. I can't really think of, like, well, obviously through the discussion we've had, there hasn't really been anything negative about it apart from the very ending. That's been the only thing. But yeah, I think this is a brilliant film. I would heartily recommend this for anybody. Not so much 4 and 5. They do kind of dip a wee bit, but there's a big gap from 3 to 4. So, you know, even with Timothy Oliphant in the fourth one, just, no, it's not there. But yes, definitely recommend this.
Yeah, I think this is where to stop with the Die Hard franchise. Like, have a really good time with 1, 2, and 3, and then just stop, pretend the other films don't exist. That's, like, just have a good time with this one. But I definitely recommend this film as well. I think Jeremy Irons is having a great old time camping it up as the egg-eating, vest-wearing villain in all of this. So I definitely think that's worth the watch alone. So that is another installment of our 1995 retrospective. If you have any comments, you can find us on all of the usual social channels, including Blue Sky. Or if you want to drop us an email, it's podcast@moviescramble.co.uk. We would love to hear your thoughts on what you think of this little retrospective that we're doing and any other films you'd like to see us cover. But until next time, it is goodbye from me. Bye.
Bye.